Let's take a look at ancient civilizations. All right, so we got 5 questions here. Who developed the first calendar system? Okay. Who developed the first known democracy in the world? Uh, Feudalism. I'll be familiar with that. Um, what city was fought over during the Crusades? So you know some of the basics on the Crusades. What is regarded as the cultural bridge between the Middle Ages and modern history? Okay, so this video we really kind of go over like quite a few things. Really, we just need to know a little bit about each of these, but it ranges from the Romans to knowing the Mayas, Incas, and Aztecs, what they're basically known for. The first democracy and monarchy, knowing a little bit about that. Egyptians, Charlemagne, feudalism, Islam, the Renaissance, Protestant Reformation, all of those. So that's a lot. But again, I don't want you to worry about it before we even get started on the video. It's a tiny bit about each of these things. Okay. We'll start with the Romans. The Romans took over and expanded upon the Hellenistic, which is Greek culture, passing down Greek architecture, philosophy, and science to future generations. Later, the Roman embrace of Christianity helped elevate that religion from a minor cult to one of the world's great religions. Roman law also influenced all subsequent legal systems in the West. Roman institutions also helped inspire the governance systems of modern democracies. Ancient Rome was an agrarian and slave-based economy. Rome was governed by laws that were in many ways quite modern. One was innocent until proven guilty. Okay, so isn't that interesting, right? The Romans did all of this great stuff, but then they also had the slave-based economy. Wonder where we got that from, huh? Where we, meaning the United States. Okay, was there a question about the Romans? Uh, Looks like not. We have an awful lot here. Romans, it does show up a lot, right? All these things were important and could show up. Greek culture, certainly. What they did for Christianity, impact on law and government, and then finally that it was a slave-based economy. Okay. The Mayans were known for their hieroglyphic script, which was the only one fully developed writing system of the pre-Columbian peoples. They were also known for their contributions to art, architecture, mathematics, and the calendar. Okay, so if you got a question about the Mayans, most likely what it's going to be is that they want you to know that it was the only fully developed writing system of the pre-Columbian peoples. That's the one thing you want to commit to mind for the Mayans, even though they also did have impacts on art, architecture, mathematics, and the calendar. The Incas built amazing bridges and roads. They also had a sophisticated system of government. So with Incas, you're thinking bridges and roads, right? And with the Aztecs, they developed the first known calendar system. They also invented a written language. So if it's about calendar, then we're thinking Aztecs, even though the Mayans also had an impact on the calendar, right? But the Aztecs were really the first. Athenian democracy was developed around the 5th century BC in the Greek city state of Athens and was the first known democracy in the world. Pericles was the longest lasting leader during this time period, typically referred to as the Golden Age. All citizens could vote, although it should be noted that women and slaves were not considered citizens. Okay, first democracy, Athenian democracy. So we give credit to the Greeks for that one. Okay, and then comparing it to monarchy. England established a monarchy around 1100. France became a stronger nation under its monarch after winning the Hundred Years' War. Monarchy is a form of government in which a single family rules from generation to generation. The power or sovereignty is personified in a single individual. Okay, so you want to be familiar with exactly all these years, like, the fact that it was England at the year 1100, not probably that important, right? But understanding that England and France both grew with a monarchy and understanding just the basic definition of a monarchy, which is that it's a single family ruling from generation to generation. That's the important parts. Egyptians who lived near the Nile River noticed that there was fertile soil nearby. This allowed for food to be grown, and a large civilization was developed. Pharaoh is the common title of the monarchs of ancient Egypt from the first dynasty until the Macedonian conquest in 305 BC. However, the actual term pharaoh was not used contemporaneously for a ruler circa 1200 BC. Okay, there we go for some Egyptians. Fertile soil near the Nile River, right? And that allowed for food to be grown and a large civilization to be developed. Charlemagne, do we know who that is? You could say that Charlemagne united most of Europe. He was king of the Franks from 768, king of the Lombards from 774, and emperor of the Romans from 800. He united much of Europe during the early Middle Ages. He was the first recognized emperor in Western Europe since the fall of the Western Roman Empire 3 centuries earlier. Okay, so it's a lot of detail there. If you know that he united most of Europe, that's probably going to be the question. Feudalism. Feudalism was a combination of legal and military customs in medieval Europe that flourished between the 9th and 15th centuries. Broadly defined, it was a way of structuring society around relationships derived from the holding of land in exchange for service or labor. Let me say that again, make sure you got it. Feudalism is a way of structuring society around relationships derived from the holding of land in exchange for service or labor. Under feudalism, kings granted land to nobles who had soldiers that protected the land. Peasants farmed the land. Nobles paid taxes to kings, and peasants paid taxes to nobles. The feudal system established boundaries and led to peace in Europe for a few centuries. Okay, so that's an interesting taxation policy, right? Very different than what we're used to in the US. Kings granted lands to nobles who had soldiers protecting the land. Peasants farmed the land. I'm just repeating this just to make sure you got it, right? Nobles paid taxes to kings, peasants paid taxes to nobles. Okay, the Crusades. During a series of war known as the Crusades, Christians and Muslims fought over the city of Jerusalem. So I believe that was one of our questions, right? What city was it that they fought over during the Crusades? Jerusalem. Christians eventually gained control of the city, but ruled for less than a century. A more lasting impact was that trade between Europe and the Middle East was opened up. This also led to the growth of cities as people left manors and went to work in cities. Okay. As far as the religion of Islam, just really basic. Islam was founded by the Prophet Muhammad in the year 570, which is the early Middle Ages. I would much prefer that you knew the early Middle Ages as opposed to the actual year 570. The actual year is not going to show up as a question. Early Middle Ages, perhaps. Knowing that it was founded by the Prophet Muhammad, more likely. The followers of Islam, which are Muslims, conquered large territories, mostly in the Middle East. The Renaissance existed from the 14th to the 17th century, regarded as the cultural bridge between the Middle Ages and modern history. So that was also one of our questions, right? What was the bridge between the Middle Ages and modern history? The Renaissance. It started as a cultural movement in Italy in the late medieval period and later spread to the rest of Europe, marking the beginning of the early modern age. The Renaissance impacted art, architecture, politics, science, and literature. And then finally, we have the Protestant Reformation. During the Protestant Reformation, reformers criticized the church for abuse of power. They believed that people should be able to read the Bible themselves rather than follow only what the Pope said. These reformers were Protestants and revolted against the Roman Catholic Church. Okay, and then we have Martin Luther down there as that third bullet point. So he's the one who led the Protestant Reformation, or at least initiated it. Okay, and then we jump back to our questions. Okay, so there's a lot in this video, but we'd like you to be able to hit the pause button, go through these questions so that we're sure that you're familiar with the stuff that we talked about in the video. If you feel comfortable answering these 5 questions, these are really common questions that show up.